Get Inspired, your podcast for more inspiration and your business talk about how to connect, how to empower, and how to get inspired. With amazing guests interviewed by Ricarda, our founder of my collective. Today I'm excited to have with us Verena Pausder. She's a founder, speaker, investor, but also author of a book that just came out called Das Neue Land. She's also very much about getting involved, driving innovation and digitalization, with a special focus on digital education, but also living diversity and work-life balance and a strong belief in equal opportunities for all. So what we talked about is what inspires us, the search for role models, and the ways to be a part of the change that we want to drive in our economy and society. So here we go. Verena, welcome to my collective.
Thank you.
You've been speaking about sort of climate change, new work, digitalization, but equality really is the topic that we in my collective care a lot about. And I wanted to start with a bit more of a general perspective is who do you see is in the driver's seat for that? Do you feel like women need to do something? Do you feel like men need to do more for equality? Or is it politicians or is it business? Who do you see in the driver's seat for more equality?
That's a very good question, because I think you can't just limit it to one group or one institution and say you have to solve this for us and then we will follow. I think you need leaders in all fields. But if I look at the inequality in like the law, the constitution, so things like a spouse splitting, which was set up 1957 when there was totally different surroundings, and it's still there today. And in my eyes, it in Germany leads a lot to the fact that women don't have enough pension for their life after their careers, that they tend to work part-time because the tax effect would kind of go away if they work more. Then that's something which you just have to change by law, or which the state has to change, and the politicians. Same goes for the quota. We've tried this kind of like, please companies change something, and that hasn't really happened, this Selbstverpflichtung. And so now I think it's time to just say, okay, we gave you the chance, but if you're still at zero goal for women in the board, then obviously we have to do more. So I think my main kind of reach out would go to politicians to say, let's kind of open the field in those areas where women are still discriminated against or just don't have equal rights. And then the next thing is the companies, because obviously you can have every law in the world if it isn't really filled with life, and if you feel like that the companies don't really want it, women and men will still not feel comfortable to raise their hand and say, I'm pregnant, or I would like to take Elternzeit, or I would like to go for job sharing, if they know they're risking their career by saying that. So they would be second for me. And then I think it's mutually between men and women. The more men we have that like the fact that life is diverse and that they can also have more time with the families than maybe their fathers had, and the more women there are who can actually let go and say, I trust my husband to take care of the child and I don't have to be there and microcontrol them, the better for both of them. So everyone's basically fighting for the driver's seat, but now everyone has to kind of take it, that things actually change.
So this position, and also all other positions in the book, are also quite political, I would say, right? And I'm sure you've been quite often asked is if you want to enter politics. And you don't have to answer that question here, but let's assume you would. So, and you would be in the driver's seat on the political side. What would be on your bucket list in terms of changing the situation in terms of equality in Germany?
Well, first thing, because Stay on Board, which I initiated, is so far ready, I would just push that through Parliament, so that becomes law, that board members can actually take a time out for having a child, caring for their elderly parents when they're sick, but not sick in the sense of I'm sick for a week, but a kind of sickness in the sense as it had happened to Tina Müller, for example, from Douglas last year, without being liable while they're away. So stay on board would be one. The quota would be the second thing. And it's funny, if I think of my younger self, if I was asked the question of, do we need a quota? I was always like, we don't need a quota. Sorry, we can walk through the door by ourselves. We don't need help. And now I'm 42. And my mother always said to me, you cross the 40 line and then we talk again. And she was right, because now I'm like, let's just have this quota. It's the far bigger risk that we haven't had it so far, because that meant we had very little diverse teams. And I don't want my daughter to have the same questions in 20, 30 years. Why are there so many, so little women in leadership positions? It should be just something that becomes normal. So that would be the second. And the third thing is I would absolutely reform the spouse splitting. Get rid of Steuerklasse 3 and 5 and just say, if you're married, you're 4, and that's it. And fourth, maybe encourage companies to hire the options. So job sharing, in my eyes, is an amazing option, and so little companies make use of it in the leadership positions. And that obviously can't be dictated by politics, but you can at least kind of incentivize it, and say, if you create job sharing, then whatever state benefit you get from it, to encourage more companies to do so.
So, okay, so looking at the third sort of segment, companies, let's change to the business perspective. So in the last year, there were a lot of numbers have been circulated. During the Corona time, the Albright Foundation has published a study that there's 0% of women in the top 30 DAX who have a CEO. 0% of the top 100 DAX companies have more than 30% of female participation on the board. These are so Germany is kind of at the lower end in Germany in the comparison. Today there was also a study published by the German Institute for the Deutsche Institut für Wirtschaft that showed that the pay gap in Germany is the biggest in the EU. So the situation in Germany in an international or European comparison doesn't seem to look that bright. What do you think companies need to change on a general level? You mentioned job sharing, but also to change it also at the top level of their leadership.
Well, first of all, you have the supervisory board, and if that has little women, or not the women in the right, whatever the word for Ausschüsse is, so in the right kind of teams there, the nomination team, for example, in the supervisory board is super important, because that's where the decision is taken who will come on board as new advisory board members, and also who to nominate as at board level if there's a vacancy. And if those are all male circles, then you can still have women on the supervisory board, but then they're in the wrong position. So I learned this before entering the advisory board of Comdirect. So the first question I asked when they asked me if I would like to join, I was like, yes, but in which Ausschuss will I be? And they were like, oh, wow, in which would you like to be? I'm like, well, I would like to be in the president's and the nomination Ausschuss, because I would like to set the agenda and I would like to decide who comes in next. And they were like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And I think if I hadn't asked and if I hadn't known about this, I'd probably just have been proud to join. And so I think we need more transparency of what the actual decision ways in companies are, to set the ground for that women actually enter in the right positions to actually be able to change something. And women have to get women on board. That's like our biggest priority. I always compare it with a Trojan horse. If you're the Trojan horse that is pushed into the room first and you look like only one woman, you have to have like 4 or 5 inside of you, and obviously not literally, and bring them to the table, and at all levels of the company make recommendations for. I know this amazing woman, she could join the research and development team. I know this amazing HR manager I've worked with. So proactively raise the topic and not wait for the nomination list to come to the table, and then maybe there are already lots of suggestions on there which you wouldn't have come up with.
Women have to get women on board. We will keep that in mind, I hope, in our circles. Let me touch on one other topic. You've been quite active in the field of digitalization, and mostly focusing on digital education, which is one of the, for all parents who've been homeschooling in the last year, a super important topic. But also digitalization in terms in the economy is an important subject. And I was wondering, is that a chance for women, or is it actually putting the situation in an even more difficult situation for women? Or maybe better ask, can women use digitalization as a chance for more equality?
Well, in general, yes, because digitalization also means what we experienced for the past year, that remote work or digital ways of participating in meetings will become much more common sense. And that means you don't have to travel as much, or you have to not be in the same place. Or like we see in this call, it's totally fine to mute yourself and still listen. But at the same time, you can breastfeed or walk around and kind of make your baby not cry, which is impossible if it's physical meetings at 8 in the evening. And so I think it will higher the chances that women can participate, also especially in the evening hours, where a lot of implicit things happen in companies, and where women and especially mothers just opt out because they say, I'm not gonna not bring my kids to bed to sit in this meeting room for another 2 hours. And on the other hand, it's important that they're there. So in that respect, I think Corona has done a good job to show that you don't have to be there to actually sit at the table. Where it becomes a risk is women tend to involve less into STEM subjects, so science, technique, IT, engineering, mathematics. They study that less at schools. They don't study software engineering as much as the men do. They don't go into technical jobs as much. They don't go into data analysis or business intelligence as much. So all these jobs will obviously be the jobs where you're at the core of the product and the direction a company takes in the future. So what we have to do that it really becomes equal chances, or even a bigger chance for women, is we have to educate much earlier. And we have to kind of spark the interest of 6, 7, 8-year-old girls and never let them off the track again, and kind of give them enough peers for them not to be odd or the nerd girl in the room, but actually one of many. And then it becomes, I think, at least an equal playing field. And as I just described with the home office component as one example, also a big chance for women to participate more.
Thank you very much. So now you're a mother of 3 yourself. Can you share some tips on how this is done? How to combine job and the many jobs that you have and a family life? How did you do it? And maybe I'll come to the question later, sort of also, what kind of parenting skill, having these 3 kids and a patchwork family and sort of, let's say, the family management side, which of these parenting skills could you convert into a leadership skill?
I think to start with your second question, what would be the one leadership skill? And I'm actually really good at it. And so I think parenthood kind of enhanced it, is serenity. So letting go, knowing you're not in control anyway with kids. Yeah, you can make the best plans and they will not happen. And once you've raised child number 3, and now our children are 13, 11, 8, and 3, and the 8-year-old is my stepson, you just know that you put so much thought into getting it right, and in the end it didn't work out the way you planned it anyway. So you're kind of like, okay, let's let it go. And not let it go in the sense of like anarchy, but in the sense of don't microcontrol it all. You can't control it anyway, and it has a lot to do with trust. And I trust my kids to be great, and I don't have to be there every meter of their life to kind of check if they are. And the same goes for employees. A leader isn't a great leader if he defines the way and the goal. So if he says, this is where we want to go and this is what you should do, he's a great leader in my eyes if he makes the goal very clear, and then let's go and says, you find the way, and whatever way you choose, the goal is clear, and if you have a question you can come back to me, but if you don't, just go. And that's the same as I do it with my kids. I'm like, you want to play basketball? Cool, I'll find you the club, but from then on I'm not going to drive you to training every day. I'm not going to ask you every day how it was and if I have to do something. And it's your thing. You want to play it, you play it. And I think this is the number one leadership skill. And how do you get it all under one hat, as you say in Germany, unter einen Hut? I think I'm a black-white person in that sense. I'm very good at doing one or the other, but not at the same time. And so I have a great organization when I'm not there. And I have an amazing nanny, which I trust 100% for the past 8.5 years. I don't have to write anything down. I don't have to check up. I don't have to call. I just cross it out of my mind when I'm not there and say it's taken care of. And if something goes wrong, they'll call me. And when I'm home, I'm home. And then it's kind of like on weekends, on vacation, in the evenings, then I don't have a plan. I don't know whether we've had a bath for the last 3 days or not. Let's see if they're up for it. Let's do it. If not, let's don't. And then I kind of do the opposite of what I do during the day, where I'm very efficient and effective. I'm quite spontaneous and chaotic then in this white time, if you want so. And this is my way how it works, because then my family is my safe haven, where I can just be foolish, childish, funny, dancing, don't have to be a role model all the time. And then I go to my job life, and there I kind of know what to do. I do my thing. This helps me to get it right. I think what I wouldn't be good at, and that's why home office is a stretch for me, is this: I'm here, but I'm not. And then I constantly have to push you away and say, Mommy's on the phone, can't you see her? And that kind of doesn't feel right. So I'm handling it, but I don't like it the last 12 months. It's not that I feel like, oh, this is nice, I'm home all day. I feel it's more unfair than it was before.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I hear you. Home office is a stretch. I can totally second that. Thank you so much for that interview. And I would say bye and hand over to the closed discussion group. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.